Okay, now let's talk about low point. Quick reminder, what is low point? Low point is a fancy term that says, where are we hitting the ground? Where is this swing bottoming out on the earth? Whenever we're hitting a wedge or we're hitting an iron, basically whenever the ball is on the ground and it's not teed up high, either because it's sitting up in the rough or it's actually physically on a tee, whenever the ball is sitting down on the ground, we always want to have some degree of hitting down on the golf ball because we need to get the club underneath it. Here's the short version of what that means. If my golf ball is sitting down on the ground here, which I'll represent with my hand, we need to make sure this club is getting sufficiently under the golf ball. I'll come in a little bit closer just so we can see it a little bit better. We need to get this club sufficiently underneath the golf ball, because if we don't, if this club is elevated above the ground, what's going to happen? I'm going to hit the golf ball with this part of the club, which is called the leading edge. I'm either going to hit the middle of the ball or towards the top, which means I'm either going to thin it or I'm going to top the golf ball. And the ball is never going to get up in the air because this part of the club, the leading edge, has no loft. The club face over here has loft. It's angled upward in this direction to launch the ball up in the air, but this leading edge will never get the ball in the air. So we need to get the club completely underneath the golf ball, aka this club needs to be interacting with the earth in order for that club to get completely underneath the ball if we're going to hit it with the lofted part of the face and launch it upward. Now here's the crux of it. To get the club completely underneath the ball, we need to hit down on it. Hitting down on it to some degree lets us wedge that club underneath it. If we're catching on the upswing, we're going to hit the ground before the ball, or we're going to miss the ground and top it in this direction. So hitting down on it is going to let this club get completely underneath it when we're coming into impact. The only problem is we want to make sure when we hit down on it, we're not hitting the ground before the ball. We want to make sure we're hitting the entire golf ball first, and then we're interacting with the ground. So what does that look like if I come back over here? If I set this ball back down on the ground, and I'm going to have this stick represent where I want my club to hit the ground, in a perfect world, and I'm going to put this stick hopefully right on the front edge of the golf ball here, in a perfect world, we're going to hit the entire golf ball in the club face right here, and then the club is going to take its divot, or it's going to start hitting the ground where the stick is. So I'm hitting the ball right here, and then the ground at the back edge, or in this case, I guess it would be the front edge of the golf ball, this side over here where the stick is, I'm hitting ball first, and then the ground right where that stick is, and that's going to be the ideal version of how we're hitting the golf ball. That's going to give us our best chance of getting that club completely underneath it without hitting the ground beforehand or hitting the ground too late. Because if we hit the ground too late all the way out here in this direction, well, we're creating the same problem as not getting underneath it enough. We're going to hit the top of the golf ball before we hit the ground, and the ball is never going to get in the air. So hitting the ball first and then hitting the ground immediately after, AK, on the front edge of this golf ball over here where the stick is, if we can hit the ball first and then interact with the ground, that's going to give ourselves the best chance of getting the ball up in the air. So that's the goal we're trying to accomplish. Now, the question is, how do we accomplish that? Well, first, we have to learn the skill of hitting down on the ball. Don't even worry about if it's behind it, on it, or in front of it. Just learn to hit down on it. You would be surprised, especially for beginners or people just starting to golf, how difficult this is. I would say probably 4 out of 5 swings when they're first trying to hit the ground. If I tell them, hey, just make some swings and make this club hit the ground. You can hit it as hard as you want. You can let that club completely crash in the earth. That doesn't matter. Just make sure that club is hitting the ground. We're not missing the ground with the club. They're probably going to miss the ground 4 out of 5 swings in the beginning. Over time, they get better at it, but it's actually surprisingly difficult, at least in the beginning. Eventually, people get good at hitting the club down on the ground, but the only advice I'd give to them besides practice and work on it for a while is 2 things. Number 1, hit the ground as hard as you can. Again, this club can absolutely crash into the earth in the beginning. The only thing we don't want to do is pull away from the ground and miss it. Again, it can hit it too hard, but it can't hit it too soft. So slam the club in the earth. That's goal number 1. And goal number 2, I would tell people, is take practice swings and make sure you hear the club, thump off the earth. Before you hit the golf ball over here, make sure you take a practice swing and you're hearing this club thump off the ground. Don't swing and make it scrape the ground or miss the ground. Make sure it's thudding very loudly off the ground in that direction. Then you know you're hitting down on it. You can feel that, you can see it, and you can hear it, and that's important. If you're hitting off grass, make sure you take a divot. That means the grass and the dirt underneath the grass is taking a chunk out and it's flying forward. That's what we want to see every single time. If we can do that, then we've learned skill number 1, which is to hit down on the ball. Now, once you can take a divot every time, which is going to take you minutes to learn, it might take you a couple practice sessions to learn that. Once we learn that ability, then we're going to focus on hitting the ground at the proper time. Again, that's where the stick comes back into play over here. We're going to learn, if this stick is on the front edge of the golf ball right here, we're going to learn to hit down on the golf ball and interact with the ground right here on the front edge of the golf ball, immediately in front of it over here. So we hit the ball and then the ground immediately after it in that direction, as close to the golf ball as we can. So ball first and then ground second. Which means what? Again, we're going to play the game of Goldilocks here. I'm going to have a drill for you to work on, but we're going to play the game of Goldilocks here. It also comes down to paying attention and intent as well. We have the intent of hitting the ball and taking our divot at the front edge of the ball. That's what we're trying to do. We're paying attention if we did it, because if we hit behind it, we want to feel like we're hitting more forward. If we were too far forward, we want to try and like we're hitting more on the ball. And if we miss the ground entirely or don't take a divot, we want to feel like we're hitting more down, so we're adjusting accordingly. So we're going to have intent there. But then what we're also going to do is play the game of Goldilocks, just like we talked about. If you see it's on one side of the spectrum or the other, take a practice swing and try and adjust. If you hit behind it over here, take a practice swing where we hit more on the front side in this direction. If you hit too far forward, take another practice swing and make sure you're hitting right where that stick is. If you miss the ground entirely, make sure the next one, your club hits the ground, and adjust your feels accordingly until eventually every shot you're hitting is hitting the ball first and then hitting the ground immediately after, just like that. And now we're learning the skill of when we're trying to hit the ground. So paying attention to what we're doing, having intent itself, and then adjusting with practice swings and adjusting on each swing is going to be the quickest process to learning what that low point is while we're hitting down on the ball. Now, here's a drill you can do as well to help you learn your low point. This is going to require 2 golf balls, which if we're on the driving range, not very difficult because we have a whole bucket of them. Take 2 golf balls. First is going to be the one we're trying to hit right here. I'd still have this stick right here because that's a good visual where we're trying to hit the ground. Now, take a secondary golf ball and put it about a foot behind the one you're trying to hit. Now, in the beginning, this is going to be relatively easy because we have a lot of space, but try your best in the downswing. Now, in the backswing, you might have to pick the club up a little bit before you swing back just so you don't brush that ball away. But as we're swinging through that ball about a foot back here, try your best to miss this golf ball in the downswing. We're not releasing the club or hitting too far behind it and hitting both balls together. Try your best to miss that back golf ball, aka the orange golf ball back here, and then interact with the yellow golf ball. So as we swing down, miss the orange and then hit the yellow in this direction. Once you get good at that, then we're going to make it closer and make it more challenging. This is going to help make sure you don't hit the ground too early. We're going to now, instead of having a foot back here, move it about 8 or 9 inches behind the golf ball in this direction, make it more challenging, and do the exact same thing. Now it's going to be more difficult. We're going to have to come down more vertical and more forward in this direction, and now we're going to learn to hit that ball first and miss the behind one. And then finally, once you get good at that, move it about 6 or 7 inches away. Not any closer because then it gets too extreme and too difficult to do, but move it about 6 or 7 inches away right about here and do the exact same thing. Now again, you're going to have to lift the club up behind it and then swing, but learn to make solid contact like that. We're hitting ball first, ground second, and we're not hitting this ball back here. And now we're learning to hit down on it, and we're learning to not hit behind the golf ball over here where we're hitting both. We're learning to hit down on it at more of the proper time. So that's how you're going to learn your low point. Again, if you have intention, you pay attention, you adjust your feels when you're hitting behind it or forward at the right time, and you do that 2-ball drill, you're going to learn how to have a good low point. Now, after you get good at that, which is going to take a little while, it's probably going to take you 10 or 20 or 30 practice sessions to make sure you're hitting solid contact every single time. However long it takes, it's fine. Don't rush the next step because we don't want to put the cart before the horse. Make sure you learn that process very well, and you can basically make solid contact every time. Once we're at that stage, then we're going to play with our angle of attack. What does that mean? That means we're going to change how much we're hitting down on the ball. Right now, all we're doing is trying to come down as vertical as we can. We're almost trying to axe chop down on this thing with the steepest angle of attack possible because we're trying to stack the cards in our favor as much as we can to make sure we're going to interact with the ground, and we're trying our best not to hit the ground before the ball. If we come in more shallow, it's much more likely we're going to hit the ground before the ball, or we're going to start swinging away from it and hit bad contact as well, versus when we chop down, it's much easier to avoid the ground and then hit the ball solidly like that. Once you have learned that skill and you know you can do that basically every single time, Now we're going to start playing with our angle of attack because we don't want to hit punch shots our whole life. If I'm coming in very vertical, I might get the ball up in the air because I'm hitting it with the lofted part of the club face, but it's going to come off very low because I'm punching down on the golf ball. So now we're going to play with angle of attack. That means we're going to learn to swing more shallow until eventually we learn to quote unquote pick the ball off the earth. Once you first learn to hit hard down on it, I actually want you to learn the pick first, and then you'll be able to learn the more medium amount after that. Once you've learned to slam the club down and hit a divot every time, now I want you to try and brush the grass when you're hitting shots. Now, we're not missing the ground. We're never missing the ground when the ball's sitting on the ground, but take practice swings where this club is barely disturbing the ground. It's just barely touching it or skimming it. If we were to quantify it in terms of a divot, you would basically be disturbing the grass on top of the ground, but you'd never take a chunk out of the earth. If we're hitting on the grass, that's how we're trying to quantify it. Or if we're hitting off a mat, I'll be very quiet, so try and listen your best. We're trying to scrape the ground like that. I'm not trying to thud it like that. I'm trying to scrape the ground. And that means we're going to have a very shallow angle of attack. In other words, I'm coming in very level through the golf ball as opposed to coming downward on it. And now I'm shallowing out my angle of attack. So try and hit some shots where you hit it very picky off the earth. You're brushing or sweeping the ground. Or again, if you're hitting off grass, you're barely disturbing the grass and not taking a divot. And if you can learn to do that without hitting behind the golf ball and you don't hit it thin where you're blading it or topping it like this, if you can learn to get the ball up in the air, make solid contact and not hit behind it, well, now you've learned to have a shallow angle of attack. Again, that's going to take you probably 10 or 20 practice sessions to get good at that as well. But now you learn both ends of the spectrum. You've learned to hit hard down on it with good low point. Now you're learning to hit very shallow and level on it with good low point, which means you're going to be able to do the middle as well. Make your swing somewhere in between to where it doesn't feel so steep down or so level through. And if you were hitting off grass, you take a very shallow divot where you're barely exposing the dirt. Or if we listen, the club is gently thumping into the ground, and now we're going to have a medium trajectory. So now we've learned to hit the ball low, we've learned to hit the ball high, we've learned to hit the ball medium, and we've learned to make good low point, aka good contact where the ball is hit first, and then the ground immediately after. So practice on those things. If you can get good at all of those skills, then you will be a master of your low point, which means you're going to have no problem making solid contact, at least in terms of hitting the ball on the club face all day every time. You might miss it towards the heel or towards the toe because of other things, but in terms of hitting it on the proper part of the club face, we're not hitting it thin or hitting it fat, you will become a master, which is a paramount skill if you want to become a good golfer.